Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm joined today by Public Safety Director Andy Wilson, as well as the Ohio Department of Education and Workforce Director Steve Dakin. We also have some members of the Governor's School Bus Safety Task Force, and let me just ask those members if they could stand up. Thank you, guys. Thank you all very much for your work. They've been at this since August. They have a report that they are presenting today. So thank you all. Appreciate it very, very much. As you know, in August, we had a terrible tragedy in Clark County. A student was killed during a school bus accident, wreck. We know that buses are the safest way to transport children to school. That remains true. But when we have a tragedy like this, I think it's important for us to re-examine what we can do to make our trips that our kids are taking and grandkids are taking as safe as we can. It's something I think that is a concern to all Ohioans. Most mornings when I'm back in Cedarville, I walk early in the morning and walk by where some of our grandchildren get on a school bus every morning, 7:03, and just watch that take place. And that happens tens of thousands of times every single day when buses are stopping to pick up students across the state of Ohio. After that tragedy, we created the Ohio School Bus Safety Working Group in August. We pulled together experts from many disciplines, school boards, administrators, bus drivers, law enforcement, parents, insurance experts, many others, to conduct a holistic review of all aspects of school bus safety. The group looked at bus driver training and wellness. They looked at school bus maintenance and inspections. They looked at crash data. They looked at safety equipment and many, many other things. The group's chair, Director Wilson, will walk you through several of the very specific recommendations that have been made, and he'll do that just in a moment. But the overall takeaway of the working group is in line with what studies have consistently shown. School buses are the safest method of transportation for school students. There's nothing even close. But as this report shows, there are things that we can do. And I would say because we can do them and we know what will make a difference, we need to do them. Ultimately, everyone plays a role in making sure our children are safe when they go to school and on their way back. Bus drivers, administrators, parents, certainly other drivers on the road, all of us have that obligation. I'll be back to say make a few more comments. Steve Dakin is going to speak as well, but let me start with Andy Wilson, who headed up this group. Andy.
Thank you, Governor. Good afternoon, and again, thank you, Governor DeWine, really for your continued leadership and your focus on making our roads and our highways as safe as they can possibly be for all Ohioans. I also need to thank each and every member of the working group. You dedicated your time, your expertise, your talents, and your resources to make sure that we did more in Ohio to protect our kids. Sometimes you travel long distances to make these meetings, and we certainly appreciate your willingness to serve as part of this important group. I also want to thank our guest speakers who came from really all over the nation and gave presentations so that we could be in a position to make decisions that would, again, protect our most vulnerable population, that is our kids. I need to acknowledge the Ohio Traffic Safety Office and the Ohio State Highway Patrol. I saw some of the troopers and the leaders in the back who gave presentations, who gather statistics and information, and then our Traffic Safety Office. Without the work that you did in setting up these meetings and procuring our experts and getting the agenda, we just wouldn't be able to produce the report that we are issuing today. Finally, I need to thank Ohio's school bus drivers. I need to thank our drivers for the long hours that they put in every day and their dedication to safety while transporting our school children. One of the things that stood out to me as we worked through these meetings, I'm a dad. My daughter rides the bus. I've never really thought too much about her bus driver, although she's a nice lady that waves to us and whatnot, and she gets my kids to and from school and to their school activities. This process that we've been able to go through exposed me to the quality of drivers that we have in this state. And there is no doubt, and again, I just really didn't think too much about this, there's no doubt that the number one focus of our school bus drivers is the safety of those kids that they have in their custody and care. And that was eye-opening and refreshing for me to see as a member of this working group. When the governor created this working group, our mission was to produce a comprehensive report with recommendations to make sure that when we put our children on our school buses, that those kids are as safe as they could possibly be. We wanted to make sure that all stakeholders had a voice in this process, and that turned out to be a pretty big task in a short amount of time. 15 working group members came together for 6 meetings here at the Department of Public Safety. We heard from 30 subject matter experts and guest speakers on topics such as school bus regulations, bus design and technology, crash risk factors, and lessons learned from other school bus crashes. As we put this working group together, initially, as we were trying to figure out who was going to be on this working group, Governor DeWine picked up the phone, he called me, he said, Andy, hey, look, when you're choosing the people to be on this group, we have to hear from drivers. We have to hear from the people in the trenches who are transporting our kids every day. Working group member Davita Russell, who herself is a school bus driver, drafted a survey and received feedback from more than 1,100 bus drivers across the state. Our working group came up with 17 different recommendations, which are divided into 6 categories. Those categories include bus driver recruitment and retention, training and education for bus drivers and the public, school bus safety features, road and traffic safety, and emergency response. There's also one recommendation regarding school district use of commercial buses for school-related activities. That recommendation is made in light of the tragic crash that happened in November on I-70 in Licking County. That crash killed 6 people from the Tuscarawas Valley School District and injured many more. Now, as I go through this report, I'm not going to stand up here and I'm not going to read every recommendation that's contained in this report, but I do want to highlight a couple of areas that we discussed. And I want to open the discussion of specific recommendations by talking about the issue of mandating that school districts put seatbelts on all of their buses. Seatbelts were at the center of many discussions of this working group. Members presented tough questions to subject matter experts about the effectiveness of seatbelts on school buses, the added cost of seatbelts on school buses, and whether or not seatbelts on school buses have impact on student behavior. I want to be clear. Seatbelts absolutely have life-saving value when it comes to traffic safety. The Department of Public Safety tells all drivers of their vehicles to buckle up. We're consistent in that message. I tell my kids every time they get in the car to buckle up. If we're being completely honest, if I'm being completely honest, when I started working with this group, I tried to come in with an open mind with respect to all of the issues we were going to tackle. But when we started the work, I had a preconceived notion, and I know in talking to other members of the working group, they had a preconceived notion that there was a good chance we were going to come out the backside with a recommendation mandating putting seatbelts on all school buses. As a parent, as a member of the community, it just seemed kind of makes sense. As somebody who tells their kid, buckle up every time they get in the car, kind of makes sense. However, as a group, after hearing from the experts, hearing from our bus drivers, looking at the data or the lack of data from states that have mandated seatbelts, and listening to school districts who have tried pilot programs on their buses, we became convinced that a statewide mandate of seatbelts on buses is not the most effective use of government resources to keep our kids safe. Together, the working group decided that the decision to install seatbelts on buses should remain with local school districts who are best situated to understand their unique needs with respect to the safety of their students. Right now, seatbelts are optional on large school buses weighing over 10,000 pounds here in Ohio. Many school districts in Ohio are taking advantage of that option. As a matter of fact, over 60% of Ohio school districts have purchased at least one large school bus that has seatbelts. Instead of expending all of our resources on a single rigid safety option, we want to allow districts to have the flexibility to focus on safety features and new technology for school buses that can prevent crashes from happening at all. Features like added lighting and reflective markings that can make buses more visible to drivers behind the bus and potentially more visible to distracted drivers. As you can see, we have a list of some of these types of features. We know that the best way to protect our kids from being harmed in a crash is to prevent that crash from ever happening. We also know that these safety features can be costly for school districts, which is why we are recommending a state-funded grant program to offset those expenses and allow districts to decide which safety features, including seatbelts, that will meet their unique and specific safety needs. In addition to the seatbelt issue, another topic that we spent a lot of time on as a group was school bus driver training. We learned from Ms. Russell's survey that an overwhelming majority of school bus drivers are interested in taking more advanced training to help sharpen their defensive driving skills and improve their ability to maintain control of their bus, especially in emergency situations. There is absolutely no substitute for challenging, realistic, hands-on training for Ohio's bus drivers. While Ohio does offer some advanced training for school bus drivers, it's geographically limited. It's only offered a couple times a year. Today, we are also recommending a separate state-funded school bus driver training program to ensure that all bus drivers can benefit from enhanced safety that advanced driving training offers. The Department of Education and Workforce will work to expand the capacity of this advanced drivers training with the ultimate goal of Ohio school bus drivers, all Ohio school bus drivers, being able to attend advanced drivers training on a periodic basis. Furthermore, instead of requiring 9 hours of recertification training every 6 years, which is the current system, the working group recommends that those hours be spread out across the 6-year period by increasing the current annual training requirement for drivers from 4 hours per year to 6 hours per year. We also recommend that the Department of Education and Workforce develop a curriculum for districts to use for this annual training requirement. Anyone who reads this report will notice a theme that most of these 17 recommendations have in common. That theme is that partnerships and collaboration are the key to improving safety for everyone. State agencies must work with local school districts. Local law enforcement agencies must work with each other and work with the State Highway Patrol. And the Department of Public Safety and the Department of Education and Workforce must work with the General Assembly to advance school bus safety priorities. Through collaboration, we can leverage our diverse expertise, our resources, and our perspective to mitigate risks and prevent another tragedy involving a school bus. Over and over again, many of the working group discussions kept coming back to the fact that safety is everybody's responsibility. Everyone from school employees, to state employees, to parents, to students, to members of the public. We all have a responsibility to ensure that school bus travel is as safe as possible. Traffic crashes involving school buses are rare, and most of the time they are not caused by the school bus driver. The school bus driver is not at fault. It's other people who are operating their vehicles recklessly or who aren't paying attention that are causing these crashes. We must all be vigilant when it comes to how we drive around school buses and in school zones. Our mission to improve school safety, or school bus safety, it doesn't end today. There'll be more work to do in this space and in the weeks and the months to come. Ohio school-aged children are counting on us. Every parent in this room, every parent listening who puts their child on a bus is counting on us to get this right. We look forward to working with partners across the state to initiate positive changes to enhance the safety of school bus travel across Ohio. Thank you.
Great. Director, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank the working group for doing this. As the director explained, some of these recommendations will be up to the individual school districts to consider. Some will require action by the Ohio General Assembly. Others can be implemented at my direction. So let me talk about that. I'm announcing today that I have asked the state agencies with action items in this report to do everything they can to move forward as quickly as possible to see that these are enacted. For example, the Ohio Department of Education and Workforce will begin developing a standardized curriculum for 6 hours of annual school bus driver training. Every school bus driver in Ohio bears the same responsibilities, so it makes sense that they should also all have the same quality training. Next, the Department of Education will also begin developing wellness programming specific to bus drivers. Let me ask Steve Dakin to say a few words, and then I will then continue. Steve.
Thank you, Governor. Governor, I appreciate your work on creating this work group and for your endless commitment to ensuring the safety and well-being of Ohio students. Thank you, Director Wilson, for your leadership and work to elevate the efforts of the group. I also have to thank Carolyn Every-Try and Jessica Vodolini from the department for their participation in the task force as well. And finally, thank you to the working group members for your time, your insight, and your expertise. Nothing is more important than making sure our young people are safe and while in our care. School bus drivers play a crucial role in ensuring the safety of students. In a school community, every professional has the opportunity to make a difference for students. Bus drivers are often the first person a student sees beginning their day, and they're often the last person they see as they're leaving school. They have the opportunity to make a difference with those interactions. Setting a positive tone for students and having a great day of learning is our responsibilities, but bus drivers having a special responsibility with that early introduction and late arrival from going back home. And bus drivers have great responsibility in navigating challenges on the board. I can tell you as a former superintendent, bus drivers is one of the most difficult tasks, job in a school district. Collectively, with our partners and the team at the Department of Public Safety, the Department of Education Workforce will work with legislators to develop an action plan to implement the recommendations of the task force, because the most important thing is to ensure the safety of our students. This includes being laser focused on the critical skills, equipment, and training necessary for improving school bus safety. These recommendations reflect our priority to ensure the safety and well-being of each student traveling on a school bus. Thank you.
Very much. The Department of Public Safety has an office that focuses on wellness for first responders, so I've asked them to help with the project. DPS will also begin developing meaningful educational materials to help raise awareness of Ohio school bus-related traffic laws. Further, I've asked the Ohio Department of Transportation to support local entities with the process of auditing the physical safety of school zones to ensure roads are in good shape and that safety infrastructure such as signs, guardrails, and other traffic calming measures are in place. ODOT has already started this process in school zones located on state-maintained roads, and I applaud them for taking these proactive measures. As for items that require consideration from the General Assembly, I've directed our teams to begin conversations with legislators, and that actually began today. We need to look at potentially enhancing penalties for those who disregard the traffic laws that are meant to keep school children safe. There should be a significant penalty for someone who endangers children. We're also asking the General Assembly to provide funding for better access to advanced training that bus drivers are asking for. One of the things that came out of this working group is bus drivers asking for additional advanced training. Let me talk for a moment about the safety measures that are listed here. The recommendation from the working group is that schools be given help, significant help, to be able to enhance the new buses that they are buying, or if they want to retrofit an older bus. And so we will be asking the General Assembly for help in this area. Obviously, in the next budget, we will have a item in there that we'll be asking the General Assembly to fund. But as you all know, it's a ways until the next budget. So we are going to be talking to the General Assembly about finding additional money so that immediately we can make money available to schools. Schools go through a process. The process is that they replace, particularly a bigger school, replace a certain percentage of their buses every single year. And so if you look at the number of buses in the state of Ohio, the number that are replaced every year, our goal would be that of those buses that are in fact replaced, that every one of them would have at least some of these significant safety improvements on there. These bus fleets continue to roll over. And it's important, I think, that we, as a state, begin to raise the bar and make these buses even safer than they are today. One of the things that the working group really emphasized was the importance of avoiding these collisions altogether. Again, better lighting on the bus, other things will, we hope, lessen the number of collisions that do in fact occur. So again, these are items that the working group came up with, thought are very, very important in regard to buses. We'll be coming back with a very specific recommendation to the General Assembly, and we're discussing already how we can provide that extra help that the schools need in regard to safety. One of the things that the schools have seen in the last couple years, which we all have to recognize, is that the cost of school buses has gone up rather dramatically in the last several years, just the cost of the basic bus. As some superintendents have pointed out to me and others have pointed out to me, the school buses that we have today already have certain qualifications, and no one's going to buy a school bus in the state of Ohio unless it meets certain qualifications. Our goal is to take it to the higher level, though, even safer than what the school buses are today. Be happy to answer questions. Andy is here. Yes.
Are there any leftover COVID funds where you could just start funding some of this stuff?
Well, we're looking. I asked Director Murnix to start looking for money, and she's going to report back to me, and then, of course, we're going to talk to the General Assembly about that and see what we can do. I think it's important we get started on this. We don't want to wait until the next budget. We want to have money in the next budget to do this. And schools, obviously, buses are a significant cost. We can't stop that. We can't change that. We can't change the fact that buses cost more today than they cost last year. But what we can do is provide the money so that the school bus, when they replace a bus, or if they've got one that is just a few years old, they want to retrofit, that they have the ability to do that. And the state should be involved in paying for a significant part of that.
Can you tell us what the one provision is or the one recommendation that deals with commercial vehicles, like the one Houston and November?
Sure. It's pretty simple. It's just before a school district engages in contracting for commercial vehicles, that they have a policy centered around ensuring the safety, that those operate in a safe manner. So does the company drug test their people? Does the company criminal background check their, what's the company's safety record?
Who's the driver?
Right, that kind of stuff right there.
What's the driver's record?
So it's centered around a policy, or creating a policy that ensures the company you're contracting with is safe.
And does it require that that commercial company have that information on hand to provide to the school?
Well, it would be you don't sign that contract unless they can provide you with that.
I think what they're looking at is basically that every school develops a checklist. And before you hire a bus company or someone to transport your kids, you got to go through that checklist. It's being mindful and focusing on things that matter.
No, that's okay. What specific enhanced penalties are you asking for?
Well, I think you have two things. I'll let Andy answer that. But look, I think there needs to be a focus among judges to make sure that there's a significant penalty for someone who goes hauling around a bus when the lights are on. So part of this is, judges being mindful. This is important. Did you have a?
I've got a couple
Yeah.
things. First of all, as part of the working group's efforts, somebody did a survey of courts up in Northwest Ohio to see what the fines are actually. So there's a maximum fine of $500. But when they looked at what was actually being given, I think the range was $25 up to $250. So these courts aren't even giving anything close to the maximum. So do you look at something like a minimum mandatory? Another thing you could look at is if you violate a traffic offense involving a bus, could you make that per se reckless? So if you do hurt somebody, you do kill somebody, it's easier to convict you of aggravated vehicular homicide or aggravated vehicular assault.
And also, you get 4 points from being reckless. So.
Right.
So you're speaking more so to folks who are breaking the traffic laws versus you were kind of touching on bus drivers. It almost sounded like you're not seeking enhanced. Okay.
No, I'm sorry. That was my mistake. I was talking about people who commit a traffic violation in regard to a bus outside. And bus drivers can tell you horror stories if you talk to them about what people do out there. And again, the law can help create the culture, and the culture needs to be that these buses are sacred, and don't mess with them, and back off. So.
If money were not an issue, would the group be recommending seatbelts for every bus in the state?
So in a vacuum, you would think yes. But what we found is, you look at Avon Lake, I guess you could just have them on. They create some unintended consequences that I just wasn't even aware of before we started this. So, for example, the person who came in from Avon Lake talked about their policy was if a kid is unbuckled in the bus driver had to pull over, stop the bus until that child was rebuckled. Now, that causes a safety issue in and of itself because you've got a bus sitting stationary that's apt to be hit. So, look, I think it's better just to let the districts decide what's best and then give them the funding so that if they want to do it, it's an option for them.
And some of the things, during the discussions, there were people who said, look, of that list, there's other things on there that, and certainly collectively, that may be more important for safety than the seatbelts. So again, you certainly had differences of opinion. I think the thing that we do know is if you look at all of these items on here, there is a dispute back and forth about seatbelts. And some people argue one way, and there are legitimate arguments on both sides. But when you look at these other things that are here, I don't think there's any argument about those. If you're a bus driver, and you say, could you have all these? Yeah, I think the bus driver would say, yeah, I want them. Why? It's safer. So these are things that we know will make a difference. And they're not controversial at all, and there's no dispute. So by getting money from the state, if we can incentivize the schools to do this, then we're going to make these buses over time, as they replace their fleet, it's going to make it safer. So,
How much money are you looking for either of these safety upgrades?
you know, I don't think again, that's something that we need to talk with the General Assembly. If we did a rough estimate, and if you don't include the seatbelts, but if you look at these other items, I think, Andy, we came up with, what, 13,000 additional dollars? I think that's what it was, per bus. Yeah. So if you did all those things on there, except the seatbelts, it's like 13,000 per bus. I'm sorry?
How many buses are we talking here?
No, well, it's per bus. I mean, the figure I'm giving, and the total number of buses,
Is right, the 13, active buses right now is right at about 13,000.
13,000 buses.
How many buses are replaced every year that you mentioned earlier?
It's about 10% of the bus fleet is replaced each year.
Yeah, although we've heard from superintendents who say, they certainly are able to go longer than 10 years. So there's a range there, certainly.
Governor, of these 17 recommendations, is it, I believe, just the 3 that you outlined that you feel as though you can enact administratively without help from the legislature? 3 of the 17?
Well, yeah, I mean, certainly some of these we can. Again, some of this is not necessarily new laws. I mean, if you look at this list again, this is working with the legislature to come up with money, and we're certainly going to be engaged in doing that. Yeah.
Can I say?
Yeah, go ahead.
Real quick, there's a lot of these things that we can start moving on almost immediately. So Director Marchbanks has already started doing,
Here, right here.
Director Marchbanks has already started doing safety assessments, looking at signage and the roads. I mean, they put the rumble strips in the middle of 41 there in Clark County. He, on their own initiative as part of this, and they started looking at all of the schools that are on state routes. And then one of the recommendations is, okay, let's help the schools that aren't on state routes, or the municipalities or the jurisdictions that have those schools in their area, let's help them do the same thing.
Well, that's what I'm getting at. I understand there's a funding mechanism that the General Assembly has to help with, but of these 17, how many of them can you, like the outline, the governor outline you just talked about, can be implemented or already are being implemented without even going to the legislature?
So
That's 3.
I have to go back, and there's more than 3. I'd have to go back literally and highlight each one for you. Some of them are at the district level. We want the districts to do their own safety assessments of their routes. Look at their routes. Figure out which ones are your higher risk routes. And if you're going to buy a bus with upgraded safety features, put the bus on that route. And then if you got a route that's running just 25 mile an hour on neighborhood streets, put your older buses on that route. Those are the type of kind of strategic things that people can start engaging in right now.
And look, school superintendents and people who are in charge of the buses certainly are doing many of these things. But I think if you just look at this, a lot of effort was put into this. And, I think for those decisions that are made locally, this is a pretty good reference and guidance in regard to some of those local decisions that are made too.
So the school bus safety working group, it mainly applies to the yellow school buses. Kind of touched on the commercial ones. Should there be another working group dealing with commercial buses?
I'll let Andy talk about how much time was spent on the commercial. You want to take that then? Yeah.
So we didn't look, our focus was on the school buses. That's where we really were. Halfway through this process, we have a school that is contracted with a commercial bus company that has a fatal crash. So we looked at it just for the specific reason of, hey, in situations where schools are using outside buses, what are some things that they may be able to do just to make sure it's safe on the front end? At this point,
And so I'm asking the department to develop, based upon what they learned, but based upon their experience, develop a checklist, a standard checklist to use, not mandated, but here's best practices, here's what you need to know in regard to if you're hiring somebody, you need to know the following things, and you need to have them certify ABC to you. So we're asking them to develop that, and they will develop that.
But would you
Yeah, well, I think the department's going to do that. They will reach out to them as well. I mean, some of that stuff is common sense, but it's making it routine, it's making it standard, it's making the norm. Again, if you're superintendent or you're making these decisions, you're now moving outside the people that work for you and the people you trust, where you know what the system is, you know what they do. Now you're going over here and you're hiring somebody else. It seems to me the flag needs to go up right away. You're hiring somebody, and you need to have high standards, and you need to be able to insist on getting information from them.
Governor, you made the news of this group public, and we spoke in Springfield just days after Amy Clark's death. Have you talked to the Clark family now that you've gotten to this point, and how do you feel about the work this group has done now that we're 5 months out and have?
Yeah. Andy has. I'll let Andy answer the question.
So yes, I did have the opportunity to talk to the family, and you know, I live in that district, so I'm familiar with many families who were involved. The feedback has been an understanding of that our buses are safe, that the buses really are safe, and the concern a lot of times has been around other people hitting the buses, and maybe could we focus on driver's education and distracted driving, all areas the governor's moving in on other fronts. So yes, I have had an opportunity to talk to them about these recommendations and about the issues that are important to them.
You mentioned earlier that recruitment of bus drivers is one of the things you looked at. Did the issue of salary pay come up? And also, did you talk to the drivers involved in these 2 accidents?
So I'll take that in 2 steps. The issue of salaries and pay for bus drivers came up. We did not go down that road because we only had 5 months. That would have taken us way down a rabbit hole away from some of these other issues that we wanted to focus on. It is an important issue. Look, not just for safety. I mean, school districts in our county are getting canceled because they don't have enough bus drivers to cover their routes. And what do we know? When there's fewer buses taking kids to school, that means there's more cars and more pedestrians in the school drop-off zones, which actually creates a more dangerous situation. So yes, that's an issue that districts need to address. And then the bus driver who was involved in this, again, I'm from the district. The bus driver reached out, actually one of my family members, and asked them to pass me a message asking not to put seatbelts on buses because the bus that was burning was too much for that driver to bear.
What about the commercial vehicle?
I have not, no.
Anybody else?
I know the conversations with the legislature are obviously in the really early stages. And we talked back in December, you know, I know those are maybe just starting because you guys are putting the recommendations together. What do you feel like the legislature is going to move quickly on this? Because I know at one time there was a bill to mandate seatbelts. I'm assuming that may not go forward.
You know, I don't know. I mean, we started to reach out today to inform members of the General Assembly from that district, but also those who have already expressed an interest in school bus safety. You know, so I can't speak for the General Assembly. I don't ever try to do that. But look, they share the same background as we all do. That we either rode buses ourselves, or our kids rode buses, or our grandkids rode buses. I mean, this is a common thing that impacts everybody. So I think they certainly have an interest in making sure these buses are as safe as they can be made.
Part of the capital budget discussion?
That's possible. It's certainly possible. It wouldn't be a normal thing in a capital budget, but it's not bothered me before. So yes. Don't know. It might bother somebody else, but.
Do you know how much the training would cost?
We ran some numbers.
Talking
Look,
about the type training too.
right. We ran some numbers, and we think about $5 million a year is what. So we're going to expand it out and we're going to expand the capacity to do the advanced driver training. A lot of the feedback we got was that these bus drivers really want time behind the wheel to feel what that bus feels like when things are not going exactly right. So we want to expand the capacity to do that, but we also want to expand what we're doing with just general drivers training for the buses as well throughout the districts. So we think it'll be about $5 million. $5 million. Yes.
Can I clarify, is it $5 million just for the advanced or for the advanced and the
That would be for both. When we ran the number, creating the curriculum for the 6 hours, doing the curriculum for the 6 hours, plus expanding into the advanced.
these recommendations directly from the Clark County crash, or is there any evidence to suggest that these recommendations would have prevented the Clark County crash?
Well, when I talk to people who were involved in that, clearly something caused that driver to go left of center and hit that bus. What that is, I don't know. If that bus had been more visible, if it had more, I don't know the answer to that. I don't know the equipment that it had on it. We can only speculate at this point. But I think the concept of putting equipment on these buses that will allow other drivers to take notice of the bus if they're doing something they shouldn't be doing and avoid that bus is part of what we're doing here. Absolutely.
Can I just check numbers really quick? Because you guys said 13,000 per bus for all of those safety features.
Rough.
The seatbelts, roughly.
Rough.
Okay.
Without the seat belts, didn't count the seat belts in.
But if a school, in this hypothetical scenario, if a school were to request grant funding, they could choose not, I mean, they wouldn't have to do all of these
Right.
things?
No, that's correct. I mean, and we haven't set the program up. We don't have the money at this point. We hope to get that. The idea is to let the schools have choices, but the idea also is that any money we put out has to go towards those additional safety features, value added on top of that.
And
So,
do you have a number if they opted to do everything plus seatbelts
yeah, I don't know what the seat belts run. Somebody,
Another 19,000.
on top of the 13,000?
Another 19,000 on top of it.
Thank you.
Are, this list, does the report mandate anything on this list, or are these all optional?
think of their optional.
It would be optional. What we'd like to do is set up a grant program that allows schools to choose what that. Now, ideally, you'd set it up so they could have all of that if they wanted. But it would allow them to choose what they think they need for their routes.
But you're mandating none of them?
No.
Correct.
It looks like the NTSB in a sense, these are recommendations, not
Yeah.
mandates.
I mean, it's pointed out to me several times in conversations I've had today that we already have good standards for our buses. No bus is sold in this state for a school that doesn't meet these standards. And so this is on top of what, over the years, we have come up with. But it's really a fresh look by people who took the job very seriously with significant different backgrounds, who came up and said, look, these are all safety enhancements. Some of them probably weren't available 5 years ago or 10 years ago. And just as we have more safety enhancements on cars, most precious thing we have is our kids. So we ought to have, these on the buses. So.
One more comeback to John's question. It's not exactly like the NTSB because it's a recommendation that would come with funding. So it's more than just a recommendation. We need to break down those barriers and.
Yeah, if we want this done, and we want it enhanced on every new bus, and every bus that's switched out for another bus, we need to put some money into it. Bluntly, schools have challenges, and so, we don't want this. We didn't want to make a unfunded mandate. Didn't want to make it a mandate, but we want to have the money there that will give schools the incentive to do it.
Districts could take one recommendation and do that across the board, or they could take.
Yeah, I mean, again, the program's not been designed. We've got to work with the legislature on it. We've got to figure out how much the legislature is willing to put into this. But schools would get a certain amount of money and they could then apply it, but it would have to be applied to something that is an enhancement of safety, not something that normally comes on a bus and that they've normally been doing.
How much does a new school bus cost these days, and how much more?
Right.
than last year?
Steve, one person I talked to today who buys buses for a school said it's going up $12,000 in a year. That was just one person, so it's anecdotal.
Yes, that is correct. As somebody who bought buses when he was a superintendent, so there's a great deal of variability, but roughly right now, if you're looking at a 78-passenger bus, with none of the enhancements we're talking about here, you're looking at about $120,000 for a new school bus.
So say that, in this hypothetical, every single school wants all of their school buses updated. That's like $170 million. Where is that money going from?
No, I don't think that, we're not looking at it that way. I think the way I look at it, and everybody can look at it differently, and the legislature may look at it another way, but I think what we look at is if 10% of the buses are replaced every year, and we don't know that's exact, but it's roughly, what you want is you replace buses. You want, when they buy a new bus, the bus to have an enhanced safety beyond what it would have been but for these recommendations and but for the money that we're going to supply. We want to, so every new bus, so in a 10-year period of time, the goal would be, every bus is better than it would have been without this program, without this money, and without these recommendations. I think you have to look at it that way. You can't look at, no one's going to go in and completely change a fleet. Now, if they've got a 2-year-old bus, maybe they would take some of this money and put some of that on that bus, knowing it's got another 8 to 10 years. If you got a 9-year-old bus, you're not going to do that.
So we could take the form of them buying a whole new bus and asking for the money for that, or it would be retrofitting the system?
I think what you're going, for simplification, as we've thought about this, again, it's up to the legislature how we do this, but as you thought about this, it would be a certain dollar amount that would go out, and then that school can make its own decision about how to do it. I don't think you can micromanage this. We've given them the list. It's got to be driven from something that is enhanced safety. They can spend it on that, how they want to do it. But I just think logically, new buses and enhance those.
This is a step, but has this group accomplished what you envisioned it would?
Yeah.
When you told me that day at Springfield, hey, we're going
Yes,
to create this group.
yes. This is a group that looked at this as hard as you could look at it, got best information, listened to experts, brought a diverse point of view, and came back with these recommendations unanimously. So yes, they have given us a blueprint. They have given us a blueprint that we should follow. Now it's going to be up to us, I mean all of us, legislature and myself and local schools, to determine whether we follow this. But there's no recommendation in here that I don't accept. I accept all of them, and I'm committed to doing everything I can to get these done. Again, some of them are beyond my power, but again, we're going to get everything in here that we can get done. But yes, this group has done a great job, and I'm very, very thankful for what they've done. Okay, thanks everybody.